cynical type. You know, do you honestly believe Rickson is that great?
Yeah. Bar none.
Bar none?
Bar none.
What exactly? Why? You've seen him,
Yeah.
but it seems like everybody else has kind of moved on though. Like they've.
Well, I mean, he is past his prime.
Yeah.
He's just teaching.
Yeah. But you still think he's still the greatest. Nobody has yet to trump him.
No. Not even the son.
Well, yeah. Chrome Gracie?
Yeah.
So, like, what exactly, why? Why does he, is it because his technique is that phenomenal, or?
His technique is on another level.
Huh.
So what I would tell people, and I think you heard me say this, about the whole Michael Jordan versus Rickson thing.
It's been a while.
So Michael Jordan is thought of as one of the greatest basketball players of all time, if not the greatest. Rickson is to Jiu-Jitsu what Michael Jordan is to basketball times 1,000.
Okay.
Because you could look at Michael Jordan and say, well, you know, Kobe was pretty good, right? You could look at Michael Jordan and say, Kevin Garnett was pretty good. You can even go further back to the old Boston Celtics from the 60s and 70s, and you can say those guys are better because they earned more titles than the Bulls did. They were like 10, right? So you got Bill Russell, you got, forget who else. Bill Russell was the center of the team, and he was known as one of the greatest of all time. But, you know, I don't know who played on those teams. But then you also had the Lakers and the Celtics that were good in the 80s. So Magic Johnson could be one of the best. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was the leading scorer in basketball for decades. Right? Wilt Chamberlain scored 100 points in a game. Right? Larry Bird, one of the best players of all time. Right? So anybody can justify any one of those people as being the greatest basketball players of all time against Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
There is nobody you can justify against Rickson. The only one that might be close is Halls. And
Okay.
Rickson was better than Halls.
He is now.
He was better before Halls died.
That's true. He did beat him.
Yeah.
But let me ask, so this is not me necessarily. I'm not expressing my opinions because I don't have that much of an opinion about jiu-jitsu outside of what I've experienced from you. Like, there are those individuals that they're like, no, there are better people that are, you know, that they think that Rickson could get annihilated, especially those who are very into MMA and UFC and stuff like that. But is Rickson the best because of jiu-jitsu?
Rickson would have been the best at anything he decided to do, even if it weren't jiu-jitsu.
Oh, okay. Why do you think that?
Because if you look at any sport, they are all elite athletes. Every single one of them, right? But I gave this as an example to somebody else once. Shut touch the mic. Is the mic even on? I didn't know it was need to be on, but
Scratch audio. It's all right. This one's recording. And it's kind of clean and bright.
well, now this one's got some better sound. The thing about Rickson, well, I know it's saying that he'd be better at anything versus anybody else that he decided to do, right? Just like he's in jiu-jitsu. If you think, the example I had was Marshall Faulk. Have you ever heard of him?
No.
Marshall Faulk was a Heisman Trophy, I think he was a Heisman Trophy candidate, either candidate or winner. If he wasn't a winner, he was a candidate. He played out of San Diego State, played running back, and he just run circles on everybody. And when he got to the pros, I think he went to, I don't know where he went. Either Indianapolis or the Rams, one of the two. Maybe he played at both, I'm not sure. But there was one time when he played for Indianapolis that he had the flu. And he was playing in a game. And I remember watching him in the huddle. And then when they broke the huddle, everybody went, the offensive line went and lined up. He was in a spot. And while the quarterback was kind of just getting ready, scanning everything, he lifted the mask up off his helmet and he vomited. And then he put the mask back down. He went in, scored a touchdown with the flu, and so sick that he vomited, right? I don't know what they said his fever was, but they said he had a fever, he had the flu, all this kind of stuff, but he was still playing. So imagine somebody who is so mentally strong
that their body can be so in such a bad spot that they can still play football at the pro level and still be really good versus his peers who may not be sick that day, right? Those defensive guys, they couldn't keep up with him, even though he was handicapped that day by his sickness, right? Another thing, every football player, every elite athlete has a ton of injuries that are going on right now. A ton of injuries that they may be rehabbing, a lot of aches and pains that they just live with every day, but yet they can still outperform everybody else. How is that?
They just push the envelope. They push themselves.
Yeah, it's all up here, right? Mickey, the one that we were talking about. He tweaked his ankle. Every time, he's always got some sort of injury. He's got a lot of injuries from the military that he lives with to this day, and he still trains at a very high level. He's not a big guy, same size as Zach, right? But one day I showed him how to base his hips. He thought it was the greatest thing. It's like 6 months ago. So that night after class, he went home. The next morning, for his workout in the morning, he decided he was going to work on that concept that I just taught him. Well, what did he do? He got his dog, right? He went to walk his dog, but instead of walking his dog like you and I would walk a dog, he picked the dog up this way, and he pushed his hips forward, and he did that hip exercise for a mile away and a mile back holding the dog. Yeah. He was sore as hell when he came to class the next day, but that's what he did, right? And he's hurting. He's got all these injuries that a lot of people don't know of, and you would never suspect he has them, right? He's hurt all the time. He came to a private this morning at the house. His hand had a big old bruise because I think it was blood flowing underneath the skin from them drawing blood, and they had a bad phlebotomist who might have pierced his vein in a couple of places. But it was painful, and his hand was like this, but yet he still trained. Had he not told me it was sore and it was bothering him, I'd have never thought anything was wrong with him. And he had a rolled ankle from when somebody's escaping his mount and they rolled his ankle, but he still trains. And he trains at a very high level. Rickson is just like that. Dave told me about a time when they were at a seminar and Rickson was demonstrating how to do a leg kick that we do where you go through the knee. He was demonstrating to an attendee, and that attendee was very clumsy. He went right through Rickson's knee. And Rickson's knee, which bends this way, was bent this way. Yeah, Dave made that same face. And this is something that happened 25 years ago, and Dave is still like, ugh. Right?
And Dave's got bad knees too, so.
Yeah, and what did Rickson do? He bit his teeth, took a deep breath, shook his knee out, continued on with the seminar. And back then, when Rickson did seminars, he would train with every single attendee. And for him to have Dave and a few other people there, that was a large seminar. Probably talking 200 or 300 people or more. Which means that after that, that's the stand-up stuff, which means that was the beginning of the seminar. He does the stand-up stuff, goes into the ground stuff, and then has everybody training, and then he'll get in and he'll start training with the individual, and he taps everybody. Just like in that video from Gracie Torrance that I'm in. He went through everybody, right? And he did that all the time. But even though he had that knee injury, he just powered through. Whereas everyone else would have gone, oh, my knee, oh, you, and then okay, I'm done. Or they might have one of the assistants like Dave doing everything for him. Yeah. Nope, he did it all himself. Nobody is like that. I mean, that's a mental strength that very few people have. Elite athletes have it. And
what drives somebody to be that way, though? Is it gift? Is it kind of bred? Is it taught?
And maybe it might have been taught, maybe because he grew up in that with his father, who fought Valdemar Santana for, 3-4 hours? It was a long fight before he finally got knocked out by Santana. But 20 years difference between them, and right, big size difference. And Santana was one of his students who wanted to be a prize fighter, and Elio said, no, you can't be one. And he eventually got to a point where he challenged him to fight, and Elio fought him, and they say it's the longest fight in recorded human history. I don't know, 3.5, 4 hours or whatever. But to keep fighting even though your body wants to quit. You know, that's a lot of willpower. That's where, like that girl that we had. Did you see that video of her at the judo tournament?
Yeah.
She went, I don't know if it was 9 minutes or 11 minutes in that one match. And she just wore that girl down. And this is a 7-year-old. They would, the girl would try to throw her, couldn't throw her. They'd go down to the ground. She'd try to pin her, but couldn't quite pin her. The girl was moving. The ref would stand them back up. You'd do it again, over and over. I would say at least 20 or 25 engagements in that one match until that other girl just finally mentally gave up. Girl wore her down. She's already displaying that at the age of 7. She's special now, but she is, and I tell everybody, she reminds me of that image I have of a game-bred pit bull, right? I think of those game-bred pit bulls because when I first got my American Bulldog years and years ago, I was also looking at a pit bull, but I wanted one of those game-bred ones because they're not man-aggressive, right? So most of you who know pit bulls, they're pretty friendly dogs. I mean, they're not bred to be man-aggressive. They're very misunderstood because you have a few people who, every dog will have a bite. But the thing is, a dog like a pit bull that gets a bite, if you think of athletes, pit bulls are among the most elite athletes of all the dog breeds. So when they are turned bad, their effects are devastating. When you make a world-class athlete into an evil person, you teach them you take that natural strength they have and you teach them how to fight, and then they're bad and they go and use it for evil, then that's the worst of the worst situation. So a pit bull is like that. But when I think of a game-bred pit bull, these are dogs that would fight in a box, as we call it, not in a ring, but in a box. And when they're fighting, the tails are wagging. To them, it's just like people who enjoy any other sport, right? People who enjoy MMA, fighters who fight MMA. They're like that game-bred pit bull whose tails are wagging, which means that they're happy while this is all going on. They're getting hit, they're getting kicked, and for them, it's like, there's the pain involved, but then it's like, yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, hit me some more, right? I don't think like that. I don't get enjoyed. I don't get enjoyment out of getting hit. Neither does Rickson, by the way, either. But it's all about. It's the fight. I don't know if he enjoys the fight. Feels. I mean, you have to enjoy it. Maybe he enjoys this. He enjoys the training. As far as his being elite, I feel that he'd be elite in any sport that he did. And in fact, with yoga's not a sport, but I guess it could be. But when he was with his yoga instructor, his mind got so into it that he was doing stuff that he doesn't even remember doing, and he got, he just in the zone. He kept doing it. He did it to a very high level. A lot of you guys have seen him do that thing with his abdomen where he can make his abs go like this, and he can go into quadrants, diagonal, and front, back, side. He can make it look like a rope and then open up and look like a rope. It's incredible. He did it in Jiu-Jitsu. He did it in yoga. If he did any other sport, if it was soccer, surfing, whatever, I'm convinced that he'd be top level at anything because he has that mind to get him there to the point where he'll go through the repetitions that are required to do things and do them correctly. And if it's not right, he'll do it again. Not right, he'll do it again. And if he gets it right, how does he make it better? So one thing that Dave Kama told me that Rickson tells him all the time is that Rickson is always refining his technique. So the jiu-jitsu he does today is not the same jiu-jitsu as he did 10 years ago, which is not the same as he did 20, 30 years ago. Because what he tells Dave is that just because he can choke somebody from the mount, and he can do it from any way he wants, he asks himself, how do I make it better? Well, how do you make it better? He goes, well, okay, so here's Rickson, let's say in his prime, 5'9", 185 to 200 pounds, and strong, and flexible, and fast, right? He can get it, bang, gets it on you. Then his thought process would be, okay, how do I get somebody to do it to the effectiveness that I just did, but they're smaller than me? Instead of 5'9", they're 5'6". Instead of 185, they're 155, right? So they don't have the kind of strength he has. Boom, get it done. Then he tries to get it down to a grown woman who's maybe 135 pounds, maybe 5'5", and have her, yes, get it done. And then eventually he wants to work down to an 8-year-old girl. How can I get this technique so refined, get the leverage so defined that an 8-year-old girl can do it and do it effectively? That's his goal. Most people don't think like that. Most people think, okay, here's the jiu-jitsu I learned. Now, let me go shoot some steroids. Let me do some testosterone. Let me whatever. Let me go get some muscle mass on me so I can now be stronger at it. That's the opposite. They're taking what they've got and they're trying to get stronger at it so they can make their body do it better. Whereas Rickson says, here's this technique and let me find it, make it so precise that an 8-year-old girl can do it.
It sounds like buying a cheap kitchen knife, and instead of sharpening it and honing it to be precision, you just try to make yourself stronger to cut the same amount of stuff.
Yeah, that's what the typical mentality is, right? This knife doesn't do it for me, so I'll just swing harder with the knife. Whereas Rickson is, how do I make it even sharper? So instead of going with 2 pounds of pressure, I can do it with a half a pound of pressure. That makes that knife far better. After that knife is honed to that level, he has another knife that needs to be honed. And these are all honed knives. These are all those special knives made out of Japan. And they can all cut whatever he wants to cut it with. But as good as they are, you still have to put 2 pounds of force in the cut. He wants to do it to 1 pound and then to a half a pound. Wants to make it so maybe even the weight of the blade and you drag it will cut something, right? That's my impression, based on my conversation with Dave, about how precise he wants his technique to be. Now, there's probably no one who thinks like that. And once they think like that, they maybe started thinking like that maybe in their 20s or 30s. Well, Rickson's been doing this since he was a kid, right? So he's got all these years a head start on everybody. And he's always been doing this. That's my impression on why Rickson is the best. And that, granted, his body and his mind, his family, all kind of came together. And his mentors all came together to create Rickson the way he is. Now, are we going to have somebody like that again? I would say probably not. In fact, I think the second generation of Gracie Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, I am led to believe that they were the best, because they had Elio and Carlos, who were single-mindedly focusing on having their family be the best team that can possibly be. They had a ranch that housed everyone. And I remember Helson telling me they ate in like 4 or 5 shifts a day because there were so many people. They were there all summer long, maybe all winter long, I don't know, but because they're Southern Hemisphere. But they were there for an entire season. The entire family was there, and they just trained. They're a family, so it's not like an academy where you have different people coming in at different times. It's their family. They all had to be there. And then once they were out of there and back in the city, they're all at the academy, right? I don't know who was telling me this, but they'd get punished. And when they got punished, they couldn't do anything but go to school and go to jiu-jitsu, right? Jiu-jitsu was you're never punished from doing jiu-jitsu. You could do all the jiu-jitsu you wanted to. That was like just drinking water, right? When I was a bad kid, my mom would ground me. And I could drink water, but I can't do anything else. No, Ryan, you can't leave. Can I watch TV? No. Can I play games? No. What can I do? You can read a book. So I could learn something, but that's really all I could do. And it's like the Gracie family, right? That second generation, they did everything that had to do with jiu-jitsu. And then some of the third generation as well. But I think that second generation probably had it the best in that they're all cousins. Elio's sons and Carlos's sons. They're all first cousins, all similar ages to a certain degree, and all training with each other. The best people all training with the best people. Now, once they had kids, now people started to split off. It wasn't all at one academy anymore, or even at 3 academies, which were the Gracie Academy, Carson Senior School, and Halls' school, right? But even Halls is part of that second generation that grew up alongside Horian and Helson and Rickson, and along with Halls' brothers. So, do I think that another Rickson can be created? Probably not. I don't think so. Because even if you look at somebody like Dave, who's one of the best students, arguably, that Rickson's ever produced, Dave will tell you himself that he's still learning from Rickson. Rickson has such a lead on everybody, even his family members, that I don't see how there'd be another Rickson. I really don't. But we're trying to keep his jiu-jitsu alive here. And we're trying to be as faithful to what he's teaching as possible. In a lot of schools, they'll teach some Gracie family member. They use his name as their academy, but maybe they come from wrestling background, maybe they come from boxing background, so they'll change things here and there. People will tell me all the time, hey Ryan, Rickson's knife defense isn't up to par with a lot of other knife systems. And I know, right? You got guys that do Eskrima that are just killers with knives, right? I mean, they'll cut you up. But if we start doing Eskrima, and we substitute the Eskrima knife concepts for Rickson's concepts, then we're slowly chipping away at Rickson's jiu-jitsu. And what I've learned is that his jiu-jitsu is part of a system. And it's a system where they all have a common thing to it. This invisible stuff he talks about, the connection, the base. Everything that he does has those things just permeating through it. Now, if we were to take one piece out and substitute it with another piece that we think is better, then you just broke the link of the chain. And then you go, well, takedowns are better if we do these takedowns, right? Wrestling takedowns are much better. So then we substitute the takedowns for wrestling takedowns. You just broke another link. The way that they punch and the way they strike, it's better if we do boxing. Okay, so now you take that part out and now you put the boxing concepts in there, right? And that's what a lot of people do. But when you do that, you're no longer teaching, if we were to do that, we're no longer teaching Rickson Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. We're teaching some of his concepts, but we're also adding in other martial arts in there as well. So now it gets to be a conglomeration of, we can't say we're faithfully teaching Rickson's Jiu-Jitsu anymore.
Well, it ends up being the MMA and the UFC stuff that you see everywhere else.
It could be, yeah. Right? Now, if we were to do traditional boxing in place of, a lot of the stand-up concepts that we may do, sure, boxing is good, but boxers are not standing up with the goal of closing the distance, managing the distance, in the way that jiu-jitsu, that Rickson has us manage distance, right? You need to be away, then in, right? Whereas boxers, they stand in the red zone and they trade punches. That's not something we want to do. And if we were to do that and start boxing, now all of a sudden our distance management is different and it's no longer jiu-jitsu, no longer Rickson's jiu-jitsu. The only thing that I can think of is we just need to stay as faithful to what Rickson does as humanly possible. Right? Now, what I do may be 10% of what he does as far as execution. But if Rickson does it, I'm gonna do it. And I'm gonna make sure our students learn it too. It's better to have our students do Rickson's jiu-jitsu at 10% of his execution, but everything is the same, versus having some people do 50% execution on certain things, but it being not the same anymore, just using his name. And I don't think that's fair to his legacy. So for Dave is, everything is Rickson Gracie. So because of that, that's all we do. And because Dave does that, that's what I do. And because I do it, that's what I want our students here to do as well.
You answered a question before I even asked. So,
which was?
Do you think anybody could?
Oh, yeah.
What would it take, do you think?
I don't know. You gotta ask Rickson.
For the next person
What,
to take?
if you're asking what it would take to create the next Rickson Gracie, I don't know. You'd have to ask Rickson. Right? If you want to know how to do something that somebody else can do, you need to ask them. Right? Common thing, we call that modeling in life. Right? Modeling, not modeling. Modeling, like I want to, if somebody is a good chef and they cook the way I'd like to cook, what do? I ask that chef, hey, can you let me kind of watch and help me out here and teach me how to do what you do? Gordon Ramsay, right? Chefs will go into his kitchen and take all that abuse from him because they want to know what he's doing. They're trying to model themselves after him. They may not model his behavior, although I'm finding that I watch a lot of chef shows and chefs they cuss a ton. Yeah, I was watching that guy, David, can't remember, was the Korean guy, American guy, but he has David Chang. Yeah, Korean. He's American, but Korean by ancestry. And watching his shows on Netflix, and he just cusses up a storm. And another one is that guy who created the Kogi truck in LA, and he's on another show. I think it's called The Chef. And every once in a while, I'll hear him cuss too. But people still will flock to them because they want to learn from them. So asking me what it takes to make another Rickson, I don't know. And even if he did teach me, right? He taught Dave. Dave's been with him for 30 years now. Yeah, almost 31 years. Dave's been training just under Rickson. Like I said earlier, Dave is still learning from Rickson. He's not done learning from him. Why? Because Rickson's always moving the ball or moving the goalposts. Because he's always constantly innovating. It's one thing to be where Rickson was 10 years ago, but how do you get past that to get to where Rickson is now? I don't know. Rickson will tell you.
You'd have to find somebody with such natural talent and circumstances that would allow for that.
Even his own son, I think he was talking on Joe Rogan or something, how he said that he's a lot younger than his father, obviously. He's in much better shape than his father, obviously. But he says, let's just go 2 minutes, right? Because after 2 minutes, then that's where Crone said his physicality will take over on his father. So let's just go 2 minutes and let's see if I can catch you in 2 minutes. And he said he couldn't. He said Rickson caught him in the 2 minutes. And I know he's trying to do his father's legacy well, but if Rickson is in his 50s, late 50s, and he can still submit his son, who's at the top of his game, what does that say about Rickson? Imagine where Rickson was at his son's age with that physicality.
Secret formula for Jiu-Jitsu, his technique is unparalleled.
But he doesn't hide anything from his son.
I know. That just means his technique is that sharp.
Yeah.
He's honed it that good. That's all I got.
Yeah.